Hello everyone and welcome to the Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela Andrieux and today we're going to be talking about folders versus albums, and we're going to go through what the differences are between each of these things in Mylio Photos, how they affect your organization, where they are best used, and how you can use both of them to make your library more organized. Before we jump into today's topic, I do want to let you know about the other live events that we have going on for you. We have live Q&A every Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. These sessions are open to anybody who wants to just jump in and ask questions, regardless of how long you've been using Mylio, or if you are an advanced user or a beginning user. Everyone is welcome. So please feel free to jump into those sessions. We talk about everything from photo organization, family history, photo editing. We've talked about photo gear, other software. We've talked about all sorts of things. So please feel free to join me. Those are wonderful sessions. And then every Friday we have our coffee breaks, which is what you're at today. And these are short tutorials, usually 20 minutes or less, followed up by more time for questions. So I hope you guys are enjoying these sessions. Next week, we're going to have a guest from our customer success team. Michael will be coming and helping us go through some of the issues that you might encounter with syncing in Mylio Photos and how you can fix those. So if you were looking for that topic this week, we did have to juggle things a little bit. He had a family emergency, so he wasn't able to make this week's session, so we moved his session to next week. So apologies for any confusion that might have caused. So we took next week's session, made it today. Hopefully y'all are okay with that. So with that, I want to go ahead and jump into today's topic, which is folders versus albums and how to organize smarter with both of these things. So let's go ahead and dive in. The things that I want you to take away from today's sessions are a good understanding of the differences between albums and folders. You'll learn when to use them for different things, what they're best for, and how you can use them together, and some best practices for structuring your library to keep it organized and syncing and happy across all of your devices. So one of the reasons why we go through all of these things with our photo libraries is to protect and share and be able to access our memories. So the things that we're trying to solve with doing organization in our libraries, organizing those folders, organizing things into albums, is we want to avoid the scrolling. We like that endless scrolling when you're trying to find something. We want to avoid that frustration. That also saves time, helps us tell stories. If we're working with our family history, even just preserving today's memories for tomorrow's generation, making sure those things are organized so they're not easily forgotten is very, very important. It also makes things easy to share. And finally, one of the key things with Mylio Photos is we want to make sure that your memories are protected and having a structured system that works with backing up your system across all of your devices. So let's go ahead and talk first about folders. So folders are the physical containers on your computer that actually hold your files. When you're seeing a folder inside of Mylio Photos, that is actually a folder that exists on your device. So when we talk about importing into Mylio Photos, one common misconception is that you're moving things from someplace else or putting them into a different location. What Mylio does is it's actually reading pictures from where they exist on your hard drive. So it's a direct link. Let's look at that a little bit more in depth here. So it mirrors your files, your file structure on your computer, and it's directly tied. So if you make changes in Mylio, it's going to make changes in your file system. If you make changes in your file system, which we don't necessarily recommend, it's better to do it inside of Mylio, but if you make changes in the file system, that also affects Mylio. So the best uses for folders is to obviously store and manage your photos, and I recommend keeping a structured hierarchy. I like to use a year-based system. So you have maybe a 2020s and then a 2025, and then you have different events inside of that folder. I like to organize those by date as well, and how detailed you get with that is really up to you. But having something that's structured is really going to make your life a lot easier. I'll show you mine here in just a minute. And just back to that key consideration that changes you make in Mylio Photos do affect your actual file system. So let me jump over here to the app, and right now we are in the folders view. If you're newer to Mylio Photos, we have different views over here on the left, and up here is all photos. We have our calendar, map, people. There's the albums we'll talk about a little bit. And right now we're in our folders view. When you go into the folders view, let's say you're switching from a different view. If you want to go to the top level of any view, go ahead and double click on that icon, and that takes you to the top level of the folders view. And we have two different representations of what's going on here. Over here on the right, which is probably what most of you are going to see, are actual icons of folders from different places that you've told Mylio Photos to watch and pay attention to. Each one of these folders exists on my computer, on my hard drive, on my external drives, on my phones that I have connected. These folders are real, and any changes you make in Mylio affect that folder in your folder system. So that's something very important that we want to understand. Now let's take a look here. This photos folder is my main organization, and I can go ahead and double click into that, and that's going to show me all of the subfolders. We also have over here on the left a tree view, which is really nice to also navigate. And these are the same folders. I can go ahead and open up that photos folder, and there are all of those subfolders. If you're not seeing this, you can go ahead and click on this little navigation icon here at the bottom to show or hide that tree view here on the left. So anytime I go into one of these, let's say I want to take a look at my 2024 pictures, I can right click on this folder and choose reveal in either Finder or External. So Finder is going to show me where this folder exists on my computer that I'm using right now. External will show me options of all of the external drives where I have Mylio syncing, so I can choose where I want to look at this. So let's start with Finder. If you're on a Windows machine, it's going to say Explorer. Let's go ahead and take a look at that here. Let me change the view here to columns so we can see a little bit better. And there's that 2024 folder. There's all of the subfolders inside of 2024. So if I go here and take a look here inside of 2024, you'll see there's a bunch of subfolders. Those are the same subfolders that you see represented here. So Mylio is a direct connection to your file system, and any changes I make in Mylio are going to directly affect this organization. Now I can also go ahead and take a look at this folder on an external drive. Again, right click, choose, instead of doing Finder or Explorer, you're going to choose External. And that's going to bring up all of my drives that have this folder on them. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my main Mylio Photos vault. And that's going to go ahead and pull up a Finder window and show me where this folder exists on my hard drive. Again, there's photos, there's 2024, and there are all of those subfolders. So everything is mirrored on every single device that you add, which is really very, very cool. So that's kind of an overview of how folders work in Mylio. You can move things around, you can put things in different folders, and when you move things in Mylio, it will physically move it in your file system. The other thing to note is when you delete something in Mylio, it will also delete it from your file system and from every device that has that folder. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a great thing, and if you do go to delete something, Mylio will warn you and say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? There are protections in place, but it's something that you have to instigate, and if you wanted to delete and clean things up, you absolutely can do that. So let's go ahead and let me pause here and take a look at some questions here. I see that we've got a few questions coming in, and see if there's any stuff here that is related to folders. All right, looks like there's some questions that we'll cover at the end.
There was a question, Angela, with Carol. She's asking about empty folders.
Yeah, so Carol, yeah, I have a lot of empty folders. Would they be duplicates? It depends on where you brought them in from and how they were added to Mylio Photos. If they're empty, what I would recommend doing is right click on that folder, check in Finder or Explorer and External, verify that those folders are indeed empty in your file system, and then you can delete them from Mylio, and then Mylio will clean that up across your file system as well. The reason I suggest checking those folders first before deleting them is that sometimes a folder that you add might have files that Mylio can't read. Now, Mylio won't let you delete that folder. If you try to delete a folder that has stuff in it, it'll just come back. But to save you that hassle of wondering why things aren't deleting, check those folders, make sure there's nothing in them, and then you can just go ahead and delete them. Yeah, if they're empty, there's no point in keeping them. Sometimes as you move things around, you might end up with an empty folder, or it's a residual from something you've had in your past organization. And typically I just recommend getting rid of those. All right, so let's go ahead and talk a bit about albums. So albums are quite different. They might look very similar, but they're quite different from folders. So albums are virtual collections that I typically recommend using for specific purposes. These I like to explain kind of like are a playlist in your iTunes or Spotify library. You can pull pictures from different, you know, I will say albums, so that's going to be confusing, but different creators, different albums that a songwriter has made, and you can pull different songs into a playlist. Albums in Mylio are like your photo albums. You can grab pictures from different folders and pull them into virtual collections. The cool thing about this is it doesn't duplicate things on your hard drive, and you can pull a picture from a specific folder to put into an album, and you can have it in as many different albums as you want without taking up additional hard drive space and not without physically duplicating that picture. So albums are super flexible and they are great for those thematic collections. So they are virtual collections that do not move your original files. They're very flexible and do not, like I said, they do not change the location of where those pictures live. They still live in the folder where they live. The best uses for an album are things like thematic collections. We'll take a look at my albums here in a moment, and I have albums for a very wide variety of things. And I love it because they're so incredibly flexible. So however you like to organize, however your mind works and how you want to group things, that's what an album is for. Keep your folders very simple, that organization simple, and then use albums for that more, you know, those project-based, theme-based things. Albums are also great for viewing and sharing. So you can curate different things from different collections and put them into an album, which you can then create a shared album. You can create prints. You could send them off to Printique to make a photo book, all sorts of fun stuff. When you're going through and organizing your albums, one thing to know is when you remove a picture from an album, it does not delete the original photo. That original photo still lives in the folder where it exists. So albums are exceedingly flexible. So let's jump over here to Mylio and take a look at my albums. So we've got my albums view here. It's right above the folders. And you can see I have quite a few here. Now I have ones that I've done quick shares of. These are some family history things that I've put together. I have, so these are groupings that I've pulled in from different scan projects that I've done. I have a slideshow here from when my husband retired from the military, and I pulled together a bunch of pictures from his 21-year long U.S. Navy career and put that into a slideshow. I've got my photography portfolio and then different categories within that portfolio. This mirrors what's actually on my photography website. Some other things that you might want to do, I have projects that I've done for remodeling the houses I've lived in and different refinishing projects. So you can see some of the before and after stuff. These are just great flexible ways to group and organize a bunch of different stuff. So it really depends on what you want to do. Doing this for trips, like I have some here for travel, different trips that I've taken, and you can pull in the best pictures from these things and make these groupings so you can easily find your favorite shots from specific things or different projects you're working on. They're just insanely flexible, which is awesome. So let me go ahead and jump back over here to the presentation, and we're going to talk a little bit about the differences here just to kind of bring home how these things function and why you might want to use both of them. So your folders are tied to the file system, albums are not. If you move things around in your folders, it moves it physically in your file system. Albums are virtual, it does not move it in your file system. Folders are based on where things are physically stored on your computer, on your external drives, and so forth. Albums have no relation to that. Folders, I typically do not recommend organizing your folders by theme or project. Some people do, and if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. But I like to actually keep my folder hierarchy very simple, date-based, and then use albums for those thematic and project groupings. And then as far as their accessibility from your Mylio devices, if you've got a phone, a tablet, a computer, running Mylio Photos logged into your account, you can access both of these from all of your devices, which is fabulous. All right, so which one should you use when you're going ahead and doing different things? I suggest using folders when you want to manage your file structure on your computer and keeping, like I said, that structured hierarchy. I like to use the year, event, and then subfolders. Let me just pop over here to Mylio and show you really quick what that looks like. So in my folders here, I'm gonna go into my main archive and let's go down here to 2025. I have a handful of folders here, and I come in with the date. So I do a year, month, day format, and then a short description as to what is inside that folder. Just usually, 1 to 3 words, very, very short. So at a glance, if I happen to be in my folder system, there in Finder or Explorer, I can see at a glance what's in that folder. So this is my structure, very simple. And then beyond that, that's when I get into albums. So any changes you make, just to kind of bring this point home a little bit more, any changes you make in Mylio to your folders will also be reflected in your computer's file system. I recommend using albums when you want to group photos without moving them or duplicating them. That is one of the album's superpowers, is that you can take pictures from a variety of different locations on your hard drive, bring them all together in one group, and you're not duplicating them and you're not physically moving them outside of that dated organization. They're great for those thematic collections like Best of 24 or Family Favorites or remodel projects or anything like that. There's so many different ways that you can group those. And it is a non-destructive organization method, meaning it's not moving anything. You can take things, you can put things into an album, you can take them out of an album. It's not deleting things, it's not moving things. It's just a virtual collection. So I highly recommend using both of these. They are great on their own, but you have to have folders in Mylio. That's where your pictures live. Albums are optional to use, but I think having both of them makes life so much easier. So you maintain that logical, consistent hierarchy with your folders. It keeps everything organized and uncluttered for long-term organization and archives. But those albums are what you're going to go to when you're looking for something specific. So when you want to find everything from that 2023, let's say 2023 family vacation, you can go ahead and go into your albums, find all of those pictures, and those are going to be the best ones from that trip. And you don't have to go scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Use it for those thematic sets. You can pull things from multiple folders, and it makes things so easy to share once you've curated those collections. And I highly recommend keeping your folder structure simple and then using albums for the short-term or evolving projects. So with that, I want to just finalize some of the things that I want you to learn and understand walking away from this presentation. That folders are your file structure. That's what's on your computer, and they're mirrored across every single one of your Mylio Photos devices. Albums, on the other hand, are very flexible and let you group things for projects or themes without moving or duplicating files. Use your folders for your long-term organization. That's what's most likely going to be handed down from generation to generation, right? They might see your Mylio library, and that's awesome if they do. If you stick with us that long, we're very grateful. But most likely you're going to hand off a hard drive with those organized folders, and that's your long-term organization. Albums are great for short-term or evolving projects. Folders and albums are awesome together. And taking the time to organize your stuff into folders and then those projects and those themes into albums makes your life better, makes your workflow more efficient, faster, all of those good things. So from there, I want to go ahead and open up the floor to questions. I see the chat has been very, very active. So let me go ahead and scroll up here to the top, and we'll go ahead and just start taking some of these questions. So first off, from Stafford, if I have enough room on an external SSD to carry travel, am I better at making it a full vault rather than a travel device? Stafford, if you have enough room on that device to make it a vault, I would go ahead and make it a vault. The only reason that I wouldn't is, let's say your drive is 2 terabytes and you're at like 1.75 terabytes to make it a vault, and you're going on a big trip and you know you're going to be capturing a ton of pictures. That doesn't leave you a lot of room to grow on that drive. So that in that case, you might be better to make it a travel backup instead of a vault. You can always tell it to, with a sync collection, keep more on there than just the last 3 months. So let's say you want to have the last 2 years of stuff on there as well. That is absolutely possible. So there's a lot of flexibility you can have there, but it's going to depend on how much free space you have and how much you think you're going to be adding to that drive while you're traveling.
Can you still treat it like the other one where you can move it around and it's going to be okay to move even if it's not a travel backup?
So whether it's a vault or a travel backup, they're both recognized as Mylio devices. So when you say move it around, are you talking between, like, say, an iPad and a computer, or a laptop and a desktop computer? Is that what you
Yes,
mean?
like
Yeah.
between the iPhone and the computer and a tablet.
Yeah, as long as they're recognized as Mylio devices, meaning you see them here under your device list. So, for instance, this one here, my little travel backup drive, this has the sync policy of just travel backup with a few extra things. So as long as it's showing here on your device list, then yes, you can move it between devices.
Very cool.
All right, let's see here. Let's see, Carol says, I do have a lot of images that Mylio can't read, HEIC files. HEIC files should be readable by Mylio. If you're on a Windows computer, you might need to install a codec into Windows to make Windows play nice with them. So as long as you can view them in Windows, you should be able to view them in Mylio.
Not so.
No,
well, not
really.
Quite. I'm working with support, but they said to get the extension, and it did nothing.
Interesting. I would, continue working with them, because I have seen this get resolved. So hopefully they can get you to a point where it's working for you.
I have got my new phone set so it doesn't create the problem.
I understand. You know, it is nice though if you can. So the HEIC files, if you can use them, they're actually more efficient space-wise and what they preserve as far as detail than a JPEG file. So if you save them as JPEGs, it's not harming anything, but it is a little better to do the HEIC if you can. So hopefully you can get that resolved and then switch your phone back. All right, Christy says, is there a limit to the number of albums you can have? Not that I know of. And one thing also to note with albums is you can have sub-albums. You probably noticed that in my library, that many of my albums have sub-albums. So if I look at the numbers that are here on top of the albums, this first number means I have 464 images in here. And then there's a little album symbol and another number. That means I have 13 sub-albums. So if I go and click into that, there's more albums. And then I can go into each one and see the individual images inside of those. So you can go ahead and stack those inside of each other and make a hierarchy inside of your albums as well.
Angela, can you confirm that it's 1,000 images per album?
I know it's 1,000 images that you can upload in a shared album. I don't know that there's a limit inside of Mylio, but if you're going to create a shared album, so let's go ahead and say I wanted to create a web gallery of this striking scenery, and I go over here to share and publish shared album, that does have a limit of 1,000. But I think as far as how many images I have here in Mylio, I don't think there's a limit there. We can double check that though, Lori. If you wouldn't mind, you can ping support and ask them that, because I know that it applies for sure to shared albums, but now you've got me second guessing myself.
Okay, I'll check.
All right, let's see here. And Stafford was referring, there we go, to the HEICs, perfect. Let's see, Christy says that seems limiting. I have over 1,000 per album. So like I said, I don't think there is a limit to the number per album inside of Mylio. It's just for the shared albums that you're creating that are the web galleries. So we'll find out for sure though. Let's see here. Stafford says, can you use a hierarchy with albums, i.e. one under another like travel and then 2025 underneath it? Absolutely yes. And sub-albums to handle the overflow. So again, we're going to clarify on the 1,000 per album, but yes, you can certainly do sub-albums. All right, Kelly says, on my attached storage, I have the folders organized by year. I want to move photos from my iPhone into the attached storage folder hierarchy, so all 2025 photos are in the same folder, even if they came from my iPhone. Is there any reason why I shouldn't do this? Nope, Kelly, go for it. I have been considering doing the same thing myself. I just haven't followed through. All right, Vic says, what happens when you deduce folders after those pics are in an album? I think you mean dedupe. So Vic, if you have a picture in an album and then you go through the dedupe process and the picture that is in the album is removed through the dedupe process, it will be removed from the album. I don't believe that it will replace it with the one that you're keeping. I could be wrong about that. I haven't tested it, but I don't think it works that way. All right, Michael says, if you use smart tags to search by date, why bother setting up a chronological folder system? So Michael, that's a great question. For me, it's more of a long-term archive scenario. While I hope to be using Mylio Photos for forever, there's just no guarantees with anything. So I like to also have an organized folder structure on my hard drives and on my computer. Also, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so that just makes my mind happy to have that level of organization. However, if you are a very busy person and your goal with Mylio is just to get everything in one place and then just browse using the views, you can absolutely do that. So I kind of consider that level 1 organization. Just get everything into Mylio and then use the views to browse. You have the life calendar, you have all of those smart tags, so you can get away without having to have everything in an organized hierarchy. But I would say it is a best practice to do so, but it absolutely is not required. All right, Stafford says, Christy, I use an app to move the iPhone images to folder hierarchy in my main storage. I'm so used to folders, which there are none on the iPhone. Excellent.
I just
Kelly
put
says,
the name of that app down at the very bottom in a new comment.
Oh, great, thank you. Kelly says, for me, I want to use Mylio to organize my photos, but I don't want to have Mylio to see that organization. That is I want my photos stored physically in a date-based hierarchy. Yep, exactly. Harold says, Mylio seems to be making automatic albums on its own. Where did they come from? I want to delete them. So if you're doing, the only reason Mylio would be making an album on your behalf is if you're doing like the quick share. So for example, if I go here into my all photos and let's say I want to do a quick shared album of these 2 black and white images, I go ahead and go over here to share and I say get shareable link. It'll create that shared album there. I can go ahead and agree to publish. And let's just go ahead and do that. That's going to go ahead and publish those 2 images as a link. And now when I go over to, I can go ahead and close that, go over to my albums and go back here to the top level, double click on that icon. And under quick shares, I now have this album here. So that's the only time Mylio is creating an album for you that I know of. If you have albums that you don't want, you can simply delete them, and that deletes the album, but it does not delete the pictures. All right, let's see here. Stafford says, can you have full res images put into a shared album? Not at this time. So when you do a shared album, do those web links, it uploads the optimized images. So these are going to look great on screen. They're printable up to a 5x7. You can enable it for people to download them, but it is going to be the optimized quality. Now, later on, hopefully coming later this year, there will be an option for Mylio Drive Plus users to be able to share the full quality files that way, but you'll have to have Mylio Drive Plus in order to do that. All right. And Stafford says, I found an app called PhotoSync to be able to move images and videos onto the computer, put into folders with dates. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. And all right. Perfect. I think I got all the questions. Lori, did I miss anything?
No, but I did get an answer from support about the shared album numbers. Aaron was saying 1,000 is the limit for shared albums. I just created an album with over 100,000 images. So if there's a limit, it should be well beyond that. So I think we got our answer.
I think that does it. So that's perfect. Thank you so much for looking that up.
Sure.
And Edward, you got your hand up. And Deborah, thank you for letting me know.
Okay. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Let me clarify something. When I started with Mylio, the folders as they appeared in Mylio did not match the folders that were in Finder.
Okay.
Are you saying they should?
Yes, they should. So, okay. I mean, you might have extra stuff that Mylio puts in there. So let me do it this way. I'm going to go here to my, so if I go here and take a look, here's my 2024 folder that I was pointing to earlier, my main photos folder. And there's a lot of other stuff inside this folder that Mylio creates. So there's some backup files of the database. There's the generated images bundle. There's some folders for some things that I've removed, but everything that you see in Mylio should also be in here. Now it's going to be the folders and your metadata, but depending on your sync policy, it might not have all the original files. That's going to be based on, like, your vaults are going to have all the original files, or if your sync policy says, I want the originals stored on this computer, it'll have the original files. Otherwise, it's just going to be the metadata and then this generated images bundle here. That holds your thumbnails and you're optimized.
Okay. An image that's in a folder in Finder, if I delete that in Mylio, it does not delete it off my camera roll.
So that's a little different when you're talking about with Apple Photos. So the conversation Mylio has with Apple Photos and your camera roll on your phone is a one-way conversation. So if you delete something in Mylio from Apple Photos, it will not delete it from the camera roll. The only way to do that is to use the free up space on this device option on your phone, which is going to be up here under the More menu, and it's only available on phones or tablets. And you can go ahead and walk through that, and that particular tool set has an option in there to delete things that you've deleted out of Mylio. So it can go in there and do that, but it's a one-off thing. It's not continuous. You have to specifically invoke it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's see here. Christy says, I'm having a weird situation where I can't add photos to an album from the people view, although after doing the add to album, when I click on the album, they are there. When I click back to the people view and select one or more of those items, it says the media is included in the album. Interesting. So let's see here. Let's go to the people view. And let me go here to my cousin. And let's say I want to grab this picture. When you're saying you want to add things, are you just right-clicking on them, Christy, and saying add to album? If you could clarify. Let's go ahead and put it in that one for now, because that seemed to work. If you're able to unmute, Christy, and let me know. All right. Well, what I would say then, if you're not able to unmute and talk right now, which is fine, if this keeps happening and you're unable to add things from a specific view into an album, then I would reach out to support. I wasn't able to replicate that issue here on my machine.
Okay, so
oh, there you are.
I was using the little three buttons at the bottom right.
Okay.
And
which is the same thing.
Okay, right. So then I did it, and then I click out and go into my album view.
Uh-huh.
And they weren't there. But so when I came back to the people view, I'm like, well, maybe I didn't do it. And it says on the people view that it's added the media to that album, but they definitely aren't there. I mean, I added 36 and they're not, none of them went over.
Is it possible that you have something like this where you have, here I have sub albums and then there's like one loose image that's in there? Or that it's nested in something else? So maybe it got put into a sub album?
Okay, maybe that's the case. I'll check that, because I was having issues figuring out the whole, because I somehow got sub albums that I didn't intend to.
It happens. If you ever do encounter that, so let's say you create an album, you accidentally create it as a sub album and you want it to be a top level, I can grab this album here that I just created. I can just drag that down to the bottom of the screen. That opens up the Mylio clipboard, which is a temporary holding area. And then I can go ahead and just click the back arrow and go back to the top level, or double click here on the albums icon, again, to go back to the top level. And at this point, I have some empty space here, which makes it easy. If you're not seeing empty space, just go ahead and drag this slider down to the negative and make them really small so it gives you some empty space. And then you can grab that album and drag it up to the top, and now that becomes a top level album.
Okay, I'll have to follow up, because that is not the case. They aren't in a sub album.
Okay, yeah, reach out to support.
And I did do another one where I did use the clipboard, and those transferred fine.
Okay.
So maybe
I'm glad at least that part is working properly. Also, when something like that happens, the couple of quick steps that I recommend people to do is, restart Mylio, possibly restart your computer if you haven't done that in a while, and make sure you're running the most recent version of Mylio Photos. Now, we haven't released an update in a little while, so you probably are running the most recent version, but I would double check those couple of things too.
Okay, great. I will.
All right. So Dennis says, what was the number of photos you could have in an album? Dennis, we were able to find out that it was at least over 100,000. So with the albums that are here inside of Mylio, they're, the limit is really, really high if one exists. If you're creating a shared album, so you're wanting to create that shared web gallery, the limit there is 1,000. All right. And Stafford is liking the clipboard. Awesome. It's one of my favorite things too. It's one of those little hidden gems inside of Mylio that just makes things so easy. And you can do it from any view. It's just a great little temporary holding area for a variety of different purposes. And in the future, we've got some great improvements coming to the clipboard that I think you guys are going to like. It's just, some little usability things that make it even more functional. So lots of good stuff in the works. I want to thank you guys all for being here. Were there any other questions before we move on for today? I think I got all the hands up, not missing anybody. I got all the chat. All right. Well, just one quick reminder that we've got coffee break next week, Tuesday and Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, or Q&A. I think I said coffee break. We've got Q&A. Join me and ask any questions. It's kind of a free-for-all. It's very fun. It's very low-key. Everyone is welcome. And then next week's coffee break, we're going to have Michael from our customer success team. He is one of our senior techs, super, super smart guy and a really great presenter. If you've ever reached out to support, chances are you've probably come in contact with him once or twice. And he's going to be telling us some of the things you can do with Mylio Photos to help prevent sync issues. And if something gets stuck, what you can do to fix it. It's going to be an awesome session. And I think you guys are going to really like what he has to say. So I want to thank you guys again for joining me. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and we will see you next time. And also thank you, Lori, for all of your help in the chat. Appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Angela. Bye.
Bye.